H is for Hawk is not the kind of film that tries to entertain the audience with fast action, shocking twists, or dramatic fights. It is a quiet and emotional film that takes its time to tell a very personal story. The movie is based on the real-life experiences of Helen Macdonald, whose best-selling memoir became famous because of the honest way it spoke about grief, loneliness, and the healing power of nature. Director Philippa Lowthorpe brings this deeply personal story to the screen with care and patience. Instead of trying to make the story bigger than it really is, she allows the emotions to grow naturally. The result is a film that feels calm, thoughtful, and deeply human. The story begins by introducing Helen Macdonald as a woman who has always loved nature, birds, and wildlife. She is intelligent, curious, and passionate about the natural world. She has built her life around studying birds and understanding their behavior. She is also very close to her father, Alisdair Macdonald. Their relationship is one of the strongest emotional foundations of the film. The movie does not need long speeches to show how much they care for each other. Instead, small moments, gentle conversations, shared interests, and quiet smiles tell the audience everything they need to know. Helen's father is shown as a kind, patient, and loving man. He supports Helen's interests and encourages her curiosity about nature. Whenever they spend time together, there is a feeling of comfort and understanding. He treats Helen with respect, and she admires him deeply. Their bond feels natural and believable. Because of this, the audience quickly understands why his presence means so much in her life. Without warning, tragedy strikes. Helen's father dies suddenly. The film never tries to make this moment overly dramatic. Instead, it presents the loss in a simple but heartbreaking way. Death often arrives without giving families time to prepare, and the film captures that painful truth. One ordinary day suddenly becomes the worst day of Helen's life. From that moment, everything changes. Helen finds herself living in a world that no longer feels familiar. Every room reminds her of her father. Every object carries a memory. Every quiet moment becomes heavier than before. The movie shows that grief is not only about crying. Sometimes grief feels like emptiness. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it makes simple daily tasks feel impossible. Claire Foy gives one of the finest performances of her career. Much of her acting depends on silence instead of words. She allows the audience to see Helen's pain through her expressions, her body language, and the tired look in her eyes. She rarely needs emotional speeches because her face communicates everything. The audience can almost feel the weight she is carrying. Instead of asking people for help, Helen slowly begins to withdraw from everyone around her. Friends worry about her, but she struggles to explain what she is feeling. People often tell someone who has lost a loved one that time will heal everything. Helen knows they are trying to help, but those words offer little comfort. Her grief feels too large to fit into simple advice. The film spends time showing how loneliness grows after a major loss. Even when people are nearby, Helen feels completely alone. She attends conversations without really listening. She walks through familiar places without noticing them. It is as if the color has disappeared from her life. One of the strongest parts of the film is that it never judges Helen's behavior. Grief affects everyone differently. Some people want to be surrounded by others. Some people hide from the world. Helen chooses isolation because it feels safer than facing her emotions directly. As the days pass, Helen becomes obsessed with one idea. She decides that she wants to train a goshawk. To many people, this decision seems unusual. A goshawk is not an easy bird to handle. It is one of the most powerful and unpredictable birds of prey. Falconers often describe goshawks as intelligent, fearless, and wild. They cannot simply be treated like pets. They demand patience, discipline, trust, and complete commitment. For Helen, however, the goshawk represents something much deeper. She believes that if she can devote herself completely to caring for this bird, perhaps she can escape the unbearable pain that fills her mind every day. Instead of thinking about death, she will think about survival. Instead of remembering hospital rooms and funeral arrangements, she will focus on feathers, hunting, and flight. The film carefully explains that this decision is not an attempt to replace her father. Rather, it is an attempt to survive the emotional storm inside her. Helen searches for the right bird with incredible seriousness. She studies different hawks, speaks with experienced falconers, and prepares herself for the responsibility ahead. These scenes move at a slow pace, but they are never boring. They allow the audience to understand that falconry is not a hobby that can be learned overnight. It requires complete dedication. Eventually, Helen meets a female goshawk. The bird is beautiful, powerful, and completely untamed. She names her Mabel. The first meeting between Helen and Mabel becomes one of the most memorable scenes in the film. The bird's sharp eyes constantly watch everything around her. She is alert, nervous, and ready to defend herself at any moment. She has absolutely no reason to trust the human standing before her. Helen immediately realizes that earning Mabel's trust will be far more difficult than she imagined. This marks the true beginning of her journey. From this point onward, Helen's daily life changes completely. Every hour revolves around Mabel. She studies the bird's behavior, learns its moods, observes every movement, and slowly begins the difficult process of training. The film pays close attention to these routines. Instead of rushing through them, it allows viewers to experience the patience required in falconry. Helen wakes early, prepares food, checks Mabel's condition, and spends long hours simply sitting quietly near the bird. There are no quick successes. Mabel remains wild. She resists control. She tests Helen's patience every single day. Sometimes the bird becomes frightened without warning. Sometimes she refuses to cooperate. Sometimes she reminds Helen that wild animals follow their own instincts, not human expectations. These early training scenes work as a powerful metaphor for grief itself. Just as Helen cannot force Mabel to trust her overnight, she cannot force herself to recover from losing her father. Healing cannot be rushed. It must happen one slow step at a time. As Helen becomes more involved with Mabel, she starts spending less time with other people. Phone calls go unanswered. Invitations are ignored. Conversations become shorter. Her entire world begins shrinking until it contains almost nothing except herself and the hawk. At first, this intense focus appears to help. For the first time since her father's death, Helen has a clear purpose each day. She has someone who depends on her. She has work that demands her full attention. But the audience also begins to notice something worrying. Instead of learning how to live with grief, Helen may actually be hiding from it. The line between healing and escape slowly becomes blurred. By the end of the opening section, the film has established its emotional direction beautifully. This is not simply a story about training a bird. It is a story about a woman trying to rebuild herself after losing the person she loved most. Mabel becomes much more than a hawk. She becomes a mirror reflecting Helen's own struggle between fear, freedom, loneliness, and survival. As Helen continues working with Mabel, the film becomes even more personal. There is very little loud drama, but every scene carries emotional weight. The audience slowly realizes that this is not only the story of a woman training a hawk, it is also the story of someone trying to understand who she has become after losing the most important person in her life. Training a goshawk is far more difficult than Helen expected. Every day begins before sunrise. She carefully checks Mabel's health, prepares fresh food, adjusts the bird's equipment, and spends hours simply observing her. Falconry demands patience, and the film never hides how exhausting that process can be. Mabel is not a tame bird. She follows her instincts. Sometimes she sits quietly, sometimes she suddenly spreads her wings and tries to fly away. At other times, she refuses to cooperate for no obvious reason. Helen quickly learns that frustration will only make things worse. Claire Foy captures this part of Helen's journey beautifully. She speaks very little, yet every expression shows determination. Even when she feels tired or discouraged, she refuses to give up. She believes that if she can earn Mabel's trust, she may also find some peace inside herself. The film spends a lot of time showing the small details of falconry. Helen weighs the bird every day because even a slight change in weight can affect its behavior. She learns when to feed Mabel and when to allow her to hunt. She understands that every decision matters. These scenes may seem simple, but they slowly become fascinating because they reveal the deep connection growing between the woman and the bird. At first, Mabel sees Helen as just another human. She keeps her distance. She watches every movement carefully. She reacts with fear whenever something unexpected happens. Helen never forces the bird to trust her. Instead, she waits patiently. Day after day, she allows Mabel to decide when she is ready to come closer. This gradual process becomes one of the most rewarding parts of the film. As trust slowly develops, Helen begins taking Mabel outside. Open fields, forests, and quiet countryside replace the closed rooms where the bird first arrived. These outdoor scenes are beautifully filmed. The camera often stays still, allowing viewers to appreciate the peaceful landscapes. Nature almost becomes another character in the story. The forests are calm, the skies feel endless. The sounds of wind, birds, and leaves create an atmosphere that words cannot fully describe. The cinematography is one of the strongest parts of the film. Every frame looks natural rather than artificial. The countryside feels alive, and the audience experiences the same sense of freedom that Helen begins to discover while watching Mabel fly. When Mabel finally takes her first confident flights, those moments feel almost magical. Helen watches with admiration rather than ownership. She understands that the bird can never truly belong to her. Mabel is wild. She always will be. That realization teaches Helen an important lesson. Love does not always mean control. Sometimes love means allowing something to remain exactly what it is. While Helen grows closer to Mabel, she grows further away from other people. Friends continue trying to contact her. Some visit her. Others send messages asking if she is all right. Helen answers politely, but her mind is somewhere else. Normal conversations no longer interest her. She finds more comfort sitting silently beside a hawk than talking to another human being. The film never says that this choice is healthy. Instead, it quietly asks the audience a difficult question. Can nature heal emotional pain, or can it become another way of avoiding reality? Helen believes she is healing, but those around her begin to worry. She eats irregularly. She sleeps very little. She spends nearly every waking hour thinking about Mabel. Even when she returns home, her thoughts remain with the bird. The line between dedication and obsession becomes thinner every day. One of the most interesting ideas in the film is that Helen slowly starts identifying with Mabel herself. She admires the hawk's independence. She admires its ability to survive without needing comfort from anyone. She begins imagining life through the bird's eyes. The more she studies Mabel, the more she distances herself from ordinary human emotions. The audience notices that Helen almost wants to become as fearless and instinctive as the hawk. She no longer wants to think like a grieving daughter. She wants to think like a wild creature that lives only in the present. This psychological transformation is handled with great care. The film never becomes confusing, but it allows viewers to experience Helen's changing state of mind. There are moments when reality and imagination seem to overlap. Not because Helen is losing her sanity, but because grief has changed the way she experiences the world. Every flight Mabel takes becomes emotionally important. Every successful hunt feels like a personal victory. Every setback feels deeply painful. Helen's emotional well-being becomes connected to the bird's behavior. When Mabel succeeds, Helen feels hopeful. When Mabel struggles, Helen questions herself. Brendan Gleeson delivers a thoughtful supporting performance in the film. Although he appears less frequently than Claire Foy, his scenes provide warmth and emotional balance. His character reminds Helen that grief cannot be defeated through isolation alone. The supporting cast never overshadows the central relationship between Helen and Mabel. Instead, they gently represent the human world waiting for Helen whenever she is ready to return. Philippa Lowthorpe's direction deserves special praise because she avoids easy emotional shortcuts. Many films about grief rely on dramatic speeches or constant tears. This film chooses silence instead. Long pauses, quiet walks, careful observation, simple daily routines. These moments communicate far more than emotional dialogue ever could. The screenplay also respects the audience's intelligence. It never explains every feeling directly. Instead, viewers are encouraged to observe Helen's behavior and understand her emotional journey on their own. The music follows the same philosophy. Rather than becoming loud or overwhelming, the score remains gentle and restrained. Often the natural sounds of the countryside replace traditional background music. Bird calls, rustling leaves, flowing wind. These sounds make the experience feel authentic and peaceful. As the story continues, however, the audience begins noticing that Helen's connection with Mabel cannot solve every problem. The grief remains. It has become quieter, but it has not disappeared. Helen finally begins to understand that escaping into the natural world is different from accepting her loss. Nature has helped her survive. Now she must decide whether she is ready to live again. By the end of this section, Helen stands at an emotional crossroads. She has achieved something remarkable by earning the trust of one of nature's most difficult birds. Yet she still carries the pain of losing her father. The question now becomes whether she can take everything she has learned from Mabel and bring it back into her own human life. The answer unfolds slowly, and the final part of the film focuses not on dramatic events, but on quiet emotional change. It explores whether Helen can stop trying to become like the hawk and instead accept herself as a grieving daughter who is finally beginning to heal. The final part of H is for Hawk is not about a dramatic confrontation or a surprising twist. Instead, it is about a quiet change inside Helen. The film understands that grief does not disappear overnight. There is no single moment when everything suddenly becomes normal again. Healing is slow, uneven, and sometimes almost invisible. That is exactly what this story tries to show. By now, Helen has spent months living almost entirely around Mabel. The hawk has become the center of her daily routine. Every decision she makes is connected to the bird. At first, this life gave her purpose, but now she starts to realize that she has also built a wall between herself and the rest of the world. There are moments when she notices how long it has been since she had a normal conversation with someone. Friends have stopped calling as often because they assume she wants to be left alone. Family members continue to worry about her, but they also know they cannot force her to grieve in a different way. The film handles these moments with great sensitivity. Nobody blames Helen for the choices she has made. The people around her simply hope that one day she will find her way back. Helen also begins to notice changes in herself. When she first started training Mabel, she believed that she could leave her old life behind. She thought that if she became completely absorbed in the hawk's world, the pain of losing her father would slowly disappear. Instead, she discovers something very different. The grief never truly left. It simply became hidden beneath endless routines and hard work. One of the strongest ideas in the film is that nature cannot erase emotional pain. It can provide comfort. It can provide peace. It can even give someone a reason to keep moving forward. But eventually, every person must face their own emotions honestly. Helen slowly understands this truth. She watches Mabel flying freely through forests and open skies. The hawk is completely comfortable in the wild because that is where she belongs. Helen realizes something important. She is not a hawk, she is a human being. Trying to live like a wild animal means denying an important part of herself. Human beings need memories, relationships, conversation, kindness, and love. They cannot survive forever by hiding from other people. This realization comes quietly. There is no dramatic speech. There is no emotional breakdown. Instead, the audience sees small changes. Helen becomes slightly more open. She allows herself to think about her father without immediately trying to escape those memories. She remembers both the sadness of losing him and the happiness of having known him. Those memories no longer feel like enemies. They become part of who she is. One beautiful scene shows Helen simply watching Mabel from a distance. Earlier in the film, she always needed to control every detail. Now she allows the bird to simply exist. There is peace in that moment. She no longer needs Mabel to save her. She is grateful for everything the hawk has taught her, but she understands that her own future cannot depend entirely on the bird. Claire Foy's performance becomes even more impressive during these final scenes. Her acting remains quiet from beginning to end, but the emotional difference between the opening and closing parts of the film is clear. At the beginning, she looks broken and completely lost. By the end, she still carries sadness, but she also carries acceptance. Those are very different emotions. She never pretends that Helen is completely healed. Instead, she shows someone who has learned to live alongside grief rather than being controlled by it. The film also avoids the common Hollywood ending where every problem is solved. Life does not suddenly become perfect. Helen does not wake up one morning completely free from sadness. She simply takes the next step, then another and another. That quiet honesty makes the ending far more believable. The relationship between Helen and Mabel remains the emotional heart of the story. Throughout the film, Mabel represents freedom, instinct, survival, and the natural world. At first, Helen wants to disappear into that world. Later, she realizes that the greatest lesson Mabel offers is not escape, but acceptance. The hawk never changes its true nature. Helen should not try to erase hers either. Philippa Lowthorpe deserves praise for resisting unnecessary drama. Many directors might have added dramatic arguments, shocking accidents, or emotional speeches to create excitement. Instead, she trusts the audience. She allows silence to carry meaning. She allows simple moments to become powerful. That confidence gives the film its unique identity. The screenplay by Emma Donoghue and Philippa Lowthorpe also deserves appreciation. Adapting a memoir is never easy because much of its emotional impact comes from personal reflection rather than external action. The screenplay successfully transforms those inner thoughts into visual storytelling without losing the honesty of the original work. The cinematography remains excellent until the final frame. The changing seasons mirror Helen's emotional journey. Cold mornings, misty fields, forests filled with light, and wide open skies all create a feeling that nature is quietly observing everything without judgment. The visual beauty never distracts from the story. Instead, it strengthens it. The music also remains understated. Rather than telling viewers when they should cry, the score gently supports the emotions already present on screen. Many scenes rely only on natural sounds, the beating of wings, wind moving through trees, bird calls echoing across open fields. Those sounds become part of the storytelling. The pacing may divide audiences. People expecting a fast-moving drama could find the film too slow. It asks viewers to be patient. Some scenes continue longer than expected because the film wants the audience to experience time in the same way Helen does. For viewers who enjoy thoughtful character studies, this slow rhythm becomes one of the film's greatest strengths. For others, it may feel challenging. The film also demands emotional attention. It does not explain every feeling directly. Viewers are expected to observe, think, and interpret Helen's behavior themselves. Some audiences will appreciate this subtle approach. Others may wish for clearer explanations. As a biographical drama, however, this honesty works extremely well. Instead of creating fictional excitement, the film respects the complexity of real grief. No two people mourn in exactly the same way. Helen's journey feels deeply personal without claiming to represent everyone. Looking at the performances, Claire Foy carries almost the entire film. She delivers a remarkably controlled performance that feels authentic from beginning to end. Every emotion appears genuine. She never overacts. She allows silence, facial expressions, and body language to tell the story. Gleeson provides warmth whenever he appears. Denise Gough, Sam Spruell, and Lindsay Duncan also contribute strong supporting performances, helping create a believable, emotional world around Helen without drawing attention away from her central journey. One of the biggest strengths of H is for Hawk is its emotional honesty. It never offers easy answers. It accepts that grief changes people. Sometimes those changes are painful. Sometimes they reveal unexpected strength. Sometimes they do both at the same time. Another major strength is its respect for nature. The film never treats wildlife as simple background scenery. Mabel is not presented as a magical animal that fixes every problem. She remains exactly what she is, a wild goshawk. That realism gives the story much greater emotional power. The direction, performances, cinematography, and screenplay all work together beautifully. The atmosphere stays consistent from beginning to end. Every creative decision supports the emotional themes instead of distracting from them. If the film has weaknesses, they mostly come from its deliberate pacing. Some viewers may struggle with its quiet style and limited dialogue. Those expecting dramatic plot twists or constant action may feel disappointed. The story is driven almost entirely by emotion and personal reflection rather than traditional suspense. Even so, these qualities are also what make the film unique. It refuses to become something it is not. Instead of chasing entertainment, it chooses truth. Overall, H is for Hawk is a thoughtful, moving, and beautifully acted film about grief, memory, healing, and the relationship between human beings and the natural world. It reminds us that losing someone we love changes us forever, but it also shows that healing does not mean forgetting. Healing means learning to carry those memories without allowing them to destroy our future. Claire Foy delivers a remarkable performance. Philippa Lowthorpe directs with quiet confidence, and the film leaves the audience with a gentle but lasting emotional impact. It is not a film for viewers looking for fast excitement, but for those willing to slow down and experience a deeply human story. H is for Hawk offers a rewarding and unforgettable journey.